So if you have to create 10 servers in Azure, then you can create, so then yeah, if you have to create 10 servers in Azure, then you can just create 10 servers within a click of 5 to 10 clicks. You would be able to create multiple servers. But if you have to create 10 servers in on-premise, first you have to put up a data center, right? Then you will have to host everything there, then you will have to host everything there, and then you would be able to set up. So in Azure, it's just a few click away. So if I have got new project for China, if I have got new project for maybe for Middle East, if I have got new project for Africa or India or Asia, or be it US, be it Canada, I can just create machines like this. Within couple of minutes, servers can be hosted. Within couple of minutes, networking can be done. Means earlier, I'm sure you all of you would have seen that there were different teams. One team is managing networking, one team is managing servers, one team is managing application, one team is creating or creating applications. So there were multiple teams. It is not like you will not have multiple teams here, but maybe if in case you are interested to do everything on your own, means if in case you would like to become the administrator, you would like to manage everything on your own, you can do that. So with the help of this course, we can learn how can we create everything on our own. How can we create everything? We'll discuss that shortly. Then it talks about elasticity. Elasticity, let's say you created a server, and while you created a server in on-premise, you gave it some kind of a size means, let's say you gave it a size of 4 CPU and 16 GB RAM, and it's your application server. Now many users have joined that application, and the application load is increasing continuously, like day in and day out the application load is increasing, and the space or the size that you have given to that server is not enough to cater that load. In on-premise, it's not like you cannot expand it, you can do that. But in Azure, it is just again a few click away. And it is very simple to achieve the elasticity. Here, the good part is you can get the horizontal scaling and you can get the vertical scaling. So either you can increase the size of the particular machine, means from 4 GB, from 4 CPU, 16 GB, you can take it up to 8 CPU and 64 GB, or maybe 32 CPU, 128 GB, or maybe 32 CPU, 256 GB, or maybe 128 CPU, thousands of GB. Even it can provide you such a huge amount of scaling. So maybe your company needs a high performance compute machines, that is also available. If in case, let's say you are hosting a huge database into your machines and you need very high CPU and very high in RAM, that can also be provided with the help of Azure. So those kinds of a machine, they refer it with the name Godzilla, or they refer it with the name Beast. But yes, very well they are available. Means machines which can give you huge amount of CPU and huge amount of RAM, that is also possible. Then in Azure, it can be very agile. Agility means how quickly, how fast it is responding. So if in case you are making some changes, be it deploying a new resource, or be it creating a new resource, or be it making any changes to the resource, it is very agile in nature. Within couple of clicks you would be able to make that change. They are fault tolerant. If in case some kind of a fault will happen into Microsoft data center, they would be able to host, or they would be able to host your machine into a different cluster altogether. So let's say earlier your machine is running into cluster number 1, where multiple VMs were running, and something goes wrong, maybe some hardware failure happens in the background. It's not like failure cannot happen in MS data centers. Very well they can happen in MS data center. And if in case it happens, they have created such an orchestration, they have done such an orchestration at their end. If in case VM would be failing, they will just redeploy your VM into a different cluster, so that maybe there can be couple of seconds or a couple of minutes downtime, but again your VM will be up and it will be deployed on a different cluster altogether. So it will be fault tolerant as well, right? You can even create disaster recovery in Azure. Disaster recovery can easily be created in Azure. So it's not like if your machines are hosted on Azure, then only you can create a disaster recovery in Azure. That is possible. Let's say you have got machines in on-premise and still you want to create the disaster recovery in Azure. That is very well possible. So let's say you have office in Mumbai. I'm just giving an example. It could be any city. It could be Mumbai. It could be California. It could be any city. It could be Lagos, right? So let's say you have office in a particular city and you would like to create a disaster recovery. So normally disaster recovery we create a couple of miles ago, hundreds of miles ago, or hundred of miles far we create a disaster recovery, so that if in case something goes wrong to a particular site, the machines can come up into a disaster recovery site. You may create that into a different country as well altogether. So maybe you have office in Canada and you would like to create a disaster recovery in US, so that if in case something goes wrong in Canada, you would be able to get your machines up in the US region, and as a result of that your business will stay up. So in Azure you can create this disaster recovery, or you can create the BCDR plan, business continuity disaster recovery plan, can be created in Azure. Any machines that are running in Azure, you can create the business continuity disaster recovery plan for them. Any machines that are running in on-premise, they're running into your data centers, in your company's data centers, for them as well, disaster recovery can be created in Azure, right? Then a very good point, I would say, a global reach. So as we discussed earlier, if you have your on-premise data center in Canada, then you can only create servers in Canada. Now let's say you have to cater the Africa customers, right? So where would you like to put the application server? You would like to put the application server close to the African users, so that the latency will be less and the performance would be good. If you have only got on-premise data center in Canada, if in case the packet would be traveling from Africa to Canada, there will be a latency, a good amount of latency will be there, plus the performance would not be good. If in case you have hosted your resources in Azure, or if in case, let's say you have to host new resource in Azure, what you will do, you will simply create a new server. You will be creating that as an application server. And this time you will be hosting that application server into Africa region. So you can create your resources across the globe. You have to create your resources in US, possible, Canada, possible, UK, possible, Middle East, possible. So across the globe, there are more than 60 regions, 60 plus regions, which are spread across 140 countries where you can host your resources. So you have got a very nice feature of hosting the resources across the globe, right? Then the customer latency capabilities. So as we discussed, we will try to host the resource as close as possible to the users, so that latency will be less and performance will be high, right? The next point is predictive cost considerations. So before you will be going to Azure, before you're trying to host any resource in Azure, what you can do, you can just use the pricing calculator, and with the help of pricing calculator you would be able to with the help of pricing calculator you would be able to somehow calculate the cost, like this is how much the cost of my server will be if I will be using the server for 30 days or for 60 days or for 20 hours. You can just calculate the cost of it, right? Then there is something called security. You can just secure the environment as well. So that is how, basically, why the question comes, why should we move to Azure? So these are all the features which Azure cloud can offer you, right? Then there is something called economies of scale. It's a very basic concept. So in economies of scale there are two things. One is capital expenditure, that is what we call as capex model, and there is something called as opex model, operational expenditure. Now what does it mean? The data center model that we follow is a capital expenditure, right? So while we were setting up the on-premise data center, we have invested a huge amount. It's not about you and me. It's like an organization has invested a huge amount, right? They have invested amount in such a manner, like if in case they have to host resources from 15 years from now, from 10 years from now, they have got enough space, they have got enough servers that they would be able to do it. It's not like every day we can increase the space in the data center. Obviously it is not possible. So they created in such a manner that they would be able to cater the request. If in case business is growing exponentially, then still they would be able to cater the request for a couple of years, right? So that is capital expenditure. In order to meet all that part, a company invests a huge amount, a very huge amount in advance, and slowly within couple of years or within multiple years, they would they would be able to get the complete benefit of the amount that they have spent in initial. So initially the amount, the huge amount that was spent, they would be able to slowly they would be able to recover the amount by putting more and more servers, or by putting more and more resources, or by putting more and more storage into their data center. Now, with the help of the cloud, or with the help of Azure cloud, there is a model called OPEX, operational expenditure. You don't have to pay a hefty amount in advance. You don't have to spend hefty amount in advance. You don't need to pay millions of dollars or billions of dollars in the starting while a company is coming up, right? So whatever you are using for 30 days, so whatever you are using, let's say today is 9th August, whatever I'm going to use in between 9th of August to 8th of September, I will only pay the bill for that, right? I'm getting multiple things. I can create my resources anywhere across the globe, right? I have got a global reach. Wherever my users will be, I'll try to put the server close to the users so that latency will be less and my performance would be good. They're very agile in nature. I can just create them within a couple of minutes. I'm getting the elasticity. Whenever I think the load is increasing, I can either create multiple machines, I can do the horizontal scaling, or either I can increase or decrease the size of the machine. And depending upon that, I will be built, right? Plus, I can follow the operational expenditure OPEX model. Means whatever I'm using for 30 days, just like broadband or just like a mobile postpaid connection, you just need to pay the bill only for those resources which you have used for the 30 days, right? Maybe after 30 days, you don't want to continue with two servers. Maybe you will be replacing these two servers with a different size or with a different family altogether. So that is easily possible with the help of Azure. So that is something which Azure can offer you, like economies of scale. One more thing, so let's say if you would be buying the server individually, so let's say as an organization you are buying the servers, and you are buying the servers, let's say you are buying 10 units of servers, right? So you go to any hardware manufacturer or you go to any organization, you say I would like to have some servers, they will give you a quotation. Maybe they give you an X amount of quotation. You say that okay, i I'm going to buy 10 units of server, so can you give me some discount? They say earlier we were giving one unit to you as 10 something, 10 as a unit, maybe 10 USD. I'm just giving you a rough example. So I was selling one server unit for 10 USD. Since you are buying 10 units, the cost becomes 100 USD, but I will give that to you only for 90 USD. I'm giving you 10% discount, right? Now, what these big giants have done, giants like Microsoft, giants like AWS, Amazon, or giants like Google, they have bought these servers in abundance. They have bought huge amount of servers, right? So obviously, the organization who was manufacturing them, if they have given us only 10% discount, probably they would have given them 40% discount or maybe 50% discount, right? Because they have bought so many servers. So now these companies were able to manage to get it at a very reasonable price. And earlier, the same server which was costing us 9 USD per unit, they were able to manage to get it at 5 USD per unit. And they can offer the same server to us at 7 USD per unit. So they were able to get their profit. They were able to manage to get their profit. We are profitable as well, because earlier we were getting the same unit while we were buying it as an individual or as an organization at 9 USD per unit. But since we got it from a giant who has purchased those servers in abundance, probably they would be able to share some profit, right? They were able to get it at 5 USD per unit. Now they will just offer that to us maybe at 7 USD per unit. So as a result of that, both of us will be profitable, right? So that is how the economies of scale work in the background. So guys, anyone, any question as of now, anything that is coming to your mind, anything that you have, any question, anything?
I have a question. My name is Ilangovan. Um, You said that you can buy this servers for any period of time. Suppose your example, you said 30 days. So I'm hosting my data center on Azure, and after 30 days, suppose I say I don't want anything. So what happens to that data? What happens to all that information?
If I got you right, sir. So let's talk about one particular unit. In data center, there can be hundreds
Hmm.
of units. So let's say you are saying
Okay.
that you set up one server in Azure,
Hmm.
and after
Hmm.
30 days, probably you don't want to continue, right? You
Yeah.
want to remove that particular server. You want to remove that particular VM, I would say, virtual machine that you have created. It
Yeah.
could be any server. It could be
Hmm.
your database server. It could be a DNS server. It could be your domain controller. You would like to remove that.
Yeah.
And you say, what happens to its data? Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There could be two things, sir. So while there could be two things, I'm sorry, may I have your name, please, sir?
Ilangovan.
Okay, so Elangama, there could be two things. One,
Hmm.
while you don't want to use the server, one thing which you can do is you can simply stop the server. So the VM that we are creating, the virtual machine, which is acting like a server, it could be a server, it could be a Linux server, it could be a Windows server, it could be a normal client machine as well. The server that we are creating, that server is basically built upon two things. Major, there is two things. There can be small things as well. One thing is the storage. The storage, we are
Okay.
storing the data onto that particular server. And second is the compute part, which is the VM size, means how much CPU and how much RAM you have given to that particular server. So costing is, major costing is based upon two things. Other costing could be if you have given a public IP to that particular server, then there will be a costing for the public IP as well. But major costing is basically based upon two things. Now there will be two conditions. One condition, you don't want to use the server, just stop the server. If you stop the server does not mean that I'm shutting down my server. No, when we go to Azure portal, there is an option to stop the server. If I stop the server, it means the resources that have been allocated to my server will be deallocated. Whatever size was
Okay.
allocated to my server will be deallocated, and the costing for the compute part will stop. Please remember, costing, guys,
Hmm.
costing for the compute part will be stopping. The VM size, that is the RAM and the CPU costing will stop. What about the C drive?
Okay.
Is the C drive also deallocated? No. Your storage will not be deallocated because there could be customer number A who don't want to use the compute feature of the server, but he still would like to have his data. So if in case you stop the server, the compute part will be deallocated, still your data will be there.
So you're only paying for the storage
You
at that
will
point.
be only paying for the storage for that point. Now there could be customer
Mhm.
number B who says, I don't want to use the compute part, I don't want to have the data as well. So you will say just remove the server. If you remove the server, your resources will be removed completely, means now you don't have to pay for the compute part, your storage will be removed, your data will be removed as well. Now you don't have to pay for the
Oh,
storage part as well. So it depends upon you, basically what exactly you're trying to achieve. I hope it answers your query.
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Guys, anyone else, any other query before we jump to a new thing? So I'll be giving you again a round for this question and the answer, but still, like whatever we have discussed so far, anyone is coming across any query for the same, then probably you can have it. Okay, well, sounds good. Uh, Now let's jump to the next slide. Just give me a moment here. Okay, so what you guys would be able to achieve, like once you have done this course, once you have done the certification, so obviously we will be giving you the training on the complete course. Plus, we will also be guiding you how you would be able to clear the certification. Both parts are important. Both parts are important that you have good in-depth knowledge. Plus, clearing the certification is also important because anyone, we completely understand, anyone who is trying to uh, attend a particular course, obviously he would like to grow in his career, right? So whenever you appear for the certifications, most of the organization offers both things. They are looking for both the things. They are looking for good content knowledge, plus they are also interested in how many certifications you have done, and both things should go hand in hand. There you can easily find people in market they have done certifications, but they do not have the knowledge. So when they go to an interview, unfortunately, they are unable to crack it. So knowledge and certification both should go hand in hand. So we will be providing you training, plus we will also be guiding you that how you guys would be able to crack the certification. So we will be giving you tips how you would be able to do that. So once you have done the training, once you have done the certification, so it clearly says here that Azure administrators would be able to manage the cloud services. There will be multiple services in cloud that you would be able to manage. For example, you can manage the virtual machine where you will be creating your service. You can manage the networking, how servers or how client machines are interacting with each other, how one network is connecting to a different network, how point to site communication is happening, how site to site, how vnet to vnet connection is happening. You would be able to manage all that part. You would be able to manage the storage. So obviously, if you're creating servers, if you're deploying applications into it, you will be storing their data as well. So you would be able to manage the storage. So I think the point number one says Azure administrators manage the cloud services that span storage, networking, and compute cloud capabilities with a deep understanding of each service across the full IT lifecycle. So you guys would be able to manage the same. You would be able to take the end user request for new cloud applications. So let's say in your organization, maybe a new cloud application needs to be hosted. So you will be able to take the request. Maybe the application team will come to you that, okay, this is something which we need from the infrastructure team. Maybe I need such kind of a server. Maybe it could be a Linux server, it could be a Windows server. This is my requirement. This server should have such kind of the size, such kind of a storage should be associated with it. It could be a managed storage, it could be an unmanaged storage. This is the performance I'm looking for. So you would be able to take end user requests for new cloud applications and make recommendations on services to use for optimal performance and scale, as well as provision it. So you would be able to do the same. Third is Azure administrator uses the Azure portal. So while people start their career with the Azure, so they can start their career with Azure portal. Once you guys will become more proficient, you can use PowerShell, you can use CLI, or you can use some other SDKs in order to manage, create, remove, deploy services in Azure. If anyone already have a good understanding of PowerShell, or anyone already has a good understanding of CLI, so you can use that particular knowledge while you are administering, or while you are deploying, or while you are removing, or while you are managing your resources in Azure. So it can be managed with the help of portal. It can be managed with the help of PowerShell and with CLI as well. Successful, last point would be successful Azure administrators start this role with experience on operating systems, virtualization, cloud infrastructure, storage structures, and networking, right? So you will have good understanding of operating system, how virtualization is playing a good role, cloud infrastructure, storage structures, and networking. Then in this particular course, the course which we are talking about, this course is AZ104, Azure Administrator Associate course. What do we have in this course? In this course is basically divided into 11 modules. Module number one, we will talk about identity, how to create users, how to create groups, how to give them roles. What is the importance of Azure Active Directory, right? There is, so in cloud, there is nothing called Active Directory, right? In on-premise, we used to have Active Directory where we used to manage users, groups, group policy, OUs, containers, right? In Azure, we have something called Azure Active Directory. So how can you take care of everything from Azure Active Directory? How can the module number two talks about governance and compliance? How can you govern the resources that you have applied, that you have created or you have deployed? How can you check whether they are compliant or not? So obviously compliance, they need to be compliant as well. So there is something called Azure policies, which can play a big role. There is something called management group, which can play a huge role, right? So basically with the help of those, you would be able to govern, you would be able to do the governance and compliance. Then how can you, the third module is Azure administration. How can you create, deploy, or manage resources? As we discussed, you can make use of portal, you can make use of Azure mobile app, you can make use of PowerShell, you can make use of CLI. There are different ways by which you can administer your Azure resources. Module number 4, 5, and 6, very interesting module, I will say, right? So identity and the networking is the backbone of anything. So module number 4 talks about virtual networking. Obviously, if you are deploying your servers, if you are deploying any machine, be it server machine, be it client machine, you will need the networking. How they are getting the IP? You need to create the network. If you will be creating the network, you will be deploying firewalls, you will be securing it, you will be creating some rules, incoming rules, outgoing rules, how traffic should come in, how traffic should go out, what kind of traffic is allowed to come in, what kind of a traffic is allowed to go out. So you will be doing all those things. You'll be securing it, you'll be creating DNS zones, you'll be creating records. So it talks about all those things. Module number 5 talks about inter-site
Sorry to
connectivity.
inter.
Please go
Yeah,
ahead,
go
sir.
ahead. Go ahead.
Please go
No,
ahead,
no, I
sir.
was about to ask the same thing. I started the same thing. Yeah, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, so inter-site connectivity, it talks about, so let's say you have one office or some resources in US and some resources you have in Canada and some resources you have in India and some, let's say, in Germany. How can you connect all of them? Maybe I have some web servers in US, some web servers in India, or maybe some users in India who are trying to access the web servers which are sitting in US. How can you connect multiple networks together? Multiple ways of connecting it: peering, VNet to VNet, site to site, express route. So multiple ways. How can it be efficient connectivity, right? Whether you would like to connect it on Microsoft Azure backbone network, you would like to go via public internet, you would like to have a dedicated line. So how connectivity can be done? There could be some users who are traveling, maybe, or they are working from home. For example, nowadays, due to this COVID situation, we all are working from home. But that does not mean that we are not connecting to a company's network. We all are connecting to a company's network with the help of VPN, right? That is what we called as point to site. How can you enable point to site connectivity maybe for your organization? Maybe the users which are sitting from home, or maybe any users which is traveling once the COVID situation will be over, or any users who still working from the home, or maybe they are not in the same state or they are not in the same country, so they would be able to connect with the virtual network with the help of the point to site connectivity. So it basically talks about all kind of the connectivity methods. Then the module number 6, which talks about network traffic management. So network traffic management is how can you load balance things? Maybe you have got 5 web servers and you are receiving huge traffic. So obviously you would like to distribute the traffic to all the web servers probably equally, so that no server would be receiving a lot of load. You have distributed the traffic in a very well manner so that all servers would be able to play a good part into the connectivity, right? Load can be balanced on multiple servers. So how can you balance the loads which are present in the same site? How can you balance the load which are present across multiple sites? How can you balance the load? Maybe there are servers which are located or which are deployed in Azure. Maybe there are servers which are deployed in on-premise. How can you balance the load across on-premise and across Azure? Or maybe you have got multiple cloud. You have some servers in AWS. You have some servers in Azure. You have some servers in on-prem. You have some servers in Google Cloud. How can you balance the load across all the 4 part? So it basically talks in depth about the network traffic management. How can you route the traffic? It also talks about user defined routes, which is a very important aspect. User defined routes, system routes. In user defined routes, we create route tables, we use dynamic routing. So it talks about all that part. Module number 7 talks about storage, like we can have a storage account or what different kind of a storage we can have. How can we store our data? How can we make use of file share? How can we sync the on-premise file share with the cloud file share? So it basically talks in depth about the storage. What are blobs? What are different types of blobs? What are different types of redundancy we can have for the storage account? Maybe it can create 3 copies, it can create 6 copies, it can give us what kind of an SLA, right? Whether I can have a structured database or a semi-structured database or maybe a queue storage. So it basically talks about all the in-depth uh, aspects of the storage. We can do the offline data transfer, we know that. Can we do an, oh sorry, we can do the online data transfer. We all know that with the help of networks we can transfer the data from one place to another. What if my network is not optimal? Maybe it's very costly, or maybe the speed is not good. Can I do an offline method of data transfer? Maybe I have got 500 TB of data, huge data. Can I do it offline transfer? So it talks about all those things in detail as well. Then module number 8, it talks about virtual machines. How can you deploy virtual machines? You can deploy Windows virtual machine, Linux virtual machines, Ubuntu server, Windows server, 2016 server, 2019 server. You can deploy the client machine, Windows 10 machine, or you can even deploy virtual machines with your own customized image. Maybe you would like to create a machine, but you would like to use your own customized image. So you can talk about, it will talk about that as well, right? Then module number 10 talks about data protection. So how can you, module number 9 talks about serverless computing. Serverless computing, basically it introduces a PaaS service. So Azure offers you three services: IaaS, infrastructure as a service. Second one is PaaS, platform as a service. And third one is SaaS, software as a service. So probably you would be able to go for the serverless computing. It offers you the PaaS. Microsoft says you don't need to manage the server. We will manage it for you. You should just focus more towards writing your codes or building your application. So how can you create web apps? How can you create containers? How can you create containers with the help of orchestration? Means how can you make use of Kubernetes, which is a very hot technology nowadays. Kubernetes, I think everyone is now trying to learn Kubernetes. So it basically talks about a basic part of Kubernetes. How can you deploy web app? How can you create the app service plan? What is containers? What is Azure container registries? It talks about all that part. Then module number 10 talks about data protection. Data protection, like how can you protect your data, or how can you create the site recovery? It will talk about two things: backup and ASR. Backup and Azure site recovery. Maybe you have VM1 running in East US. What will happen if that machine goes down? Maybe you need to have some backup of that machine. So how can you take the backup of resources running into Azure? Or maybe you have servers running into on-premise. Maybe you would like to back up those servers. So how can you do that? So it will also talk about the backup of the resources running into on-prem, right? Now you can also create a site recovery. So how can you create an Azure site recovery? So it will talk about the same as well. Module number 9 will talk about monitoring. You have got your storage, you have got different resources. Maybe you have load balancer, maybe you have web app, maybe you have VMs, different VMs. You would like to monitor them as well, how they are performing. So you can monitor them with the help of their metrics. You can collect different kind of logs. Then you can even create alerts. Maybe if someone is trying to restart your VM, maybe you can create alerts so that you will come to know what exactly needs to be done, right? So that is what it talks about, right? So this is what the course content would be, guys. Now this is the certification path for Azure. So that is how you can go for the certification. So we are talking about this particular course, AZ104, Microsoft Certified Azure Administrator Associate. If you have done AZ 900, it's good. If you haven't done it, it's not a problem. I hope you can see this in chart as well. It's optional, because in AZ 104, like 80-90% of the services which we talk about in AZ 900, we will cover them, and we will cover them in a very detailed manner. So because AZ 900 is a one-day course, there are very less number of labs, or I would say whenever whosoever is training AZ 900 participants on AZ 900, they are not giving time for the participants so they can perform the lab. But in AZ104, we will be discussing theory. The trainer will be doing the demonstration. We will be giving time to you to perform the same, right? You will be doing the demonstration, because as we discussed, having knowledge and having a practical knowledge, these are two different things. So focus will be on clearing your concepts in detail, as well as focus will be on giving you a very good amount of practical knowledge. Uh, how about Easy 500? So, sir, probably if you can just, I'm unable to get it. How about AZ 500? AZ 500 talks about the security, which is the Azure security talks about, right? So I would request you if you can probably unmute you, and probably if you can just refer to the query. I'm unable to get the complete query, I believe. Or do you want me to unmute you? I think one of the gentlemen has a query, so I'm just trying to address it.
No. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Okay. No. Okay. I know as you're going through this, I know there's different series of Azure certificates, so that stuff. Yeah, I understand there's 900, 400, but the reason I mentioned about Azure 500, that's one of the main components for security. They talk about RBAC, ABAC, policy and management groups that you mentioned earlier. So that's why I mentioned about Azure 500 security.
Absolutely correct, sir. So in AZ 500, actually, it's divided into 4 modules. So one of the module talks about RBAC, one of the module talks about management group, it talks about policies, it talks about all that part. Absolutely correct. So that AZ 500 is not mentioned here in the certification part. But yes, if you go for the AZ 500, you become a security expert for the Azure. So that is also there. Absolutely correct.
Okay,
So
cool. Thanks.
thank you. So here, this certification path includes 104. If you complete the 104 training and if you clear the certification, you will become the Azure Administrator Associate, right? Later on, let's say you feel that, okay, you are done with this, or probably if in case you would like to enroll for any other course maybe afterwards, then these are the different paths which you can follow, right? AZ 104 and 400, if you enroll it later on, you will become the Azure DevOps Engineer. If you go for AZ 900 or 300, 303 and 301 or 304, you will become the Azure Solution Architect. So we have got multiple paths here. Okay. Uh, Guys, now I would request you, if anyone has any queries for whatever we have discussed, please feel free to discuss the same if in case anyone has any query. So let's have a question and the answer round. Any concepts or anything which I try to make myself clear and I'm unable to, or any query you have in your mind, maybe you have gone through, so you have done some research of your own, and if in case you have any query, please feel free to ask. I'll be happy to answer your queries if in case anyone has any queries.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Bhupender.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No problem. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Yeah.
Is it possible to send us a link to these slides, please?
You would like me to send the link for the slides? You want me to share these slides to you?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'll check with my management team if in case I'm allowed to share the same or not. If in case it would be possible, we'll definitely share out to you. Probably you can just contact Amit for the same. Here is the Amit contact details. So he's from our management team. If in case, because ideally from my end, I'm not allowed to share the same with you, sir. I really apologize for the same. Probably if in case you really need this, probably you can get in touch with Amit. Probably he might be able to help you out for the same.
Yes, it was just really all the course numbers and everything for the training route that I was interested in, to be honest.
I certainly understand.
I didn't get, yeah, I didn't have enough time to write them all down.
There's another way, sir. What you can do is you can Google it and you can type in Azure certification path, and they will give you a list of variety of different
Okay,
Azure
thank you. That's great.
Yeah, you can Google it. Everything's on Google, and I did that. That's why I mentioned about Azure 500 with security. But I know they have it, but they just don't have the syllabus yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir.
Absolutely. Like probably you can find some information on there in Google.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, on Google you would be able to find the content. But regarding the in-depth knowledge, probably I think one of the trainer would be able to share that with you. Anyone who has a good amount of training experience or who comes from a technical background, core technical background, probably he would be able to share the knowledge. He would be able to share the path. How can you enhance the career? And he would be able to share good amount of tips which he have gained in his couple of years experience. So definitely you're absolutely correct, sir. You're
Yeah,
spot
that's
on.
correct. I mean,
Absolutely correct. Right. I think one of the ma'am also had a query. Ma'am, can you please go ahead with your query?
Yeah. Hi, Bhupender. Yeah. Yeah, it's like I just want to know like the creation of the Azure key vaults as well as the secrets groups. are also part of this course, or I mean, creation of the service principal scopes and the key vaults?
So fortunately, unfortunately, no. But if in case you would like to get them covered into this, we can do that. So key vault is nothing. We can certainly cover the key vaults part into this. So once you would be able to get the complete understanding of this course, then you will find that key vault is nothing. It's a small piece of service which you can easily integrate with the help of service principal. Service
Yeah,
principal is
but the service principal,
Mhm.
suppose you want to create like a Databricks service, right? You want to link that to the Active Directory roles and all. So you
Mhm.
want to create the secret scopes for that, for the for certain mail ID and all, like linking them.
Well, ma'am, actually, the one which you are referring to, I'm absolutely aware of it. It's a part of AZ301 course, Azure Architect and Design. But if in case you would like to have some discussion, like if in case, let's say you enroll for the session for AZ104, and you would like to have some discussion regarding the same, then probably alone only with you, we can have some discussion for a couple of minutes or maybe for an hour or so that we will have a clear understanding how we can set that up. So that can be done.
Okay,
But although it is a part of
okay,
AZ301 course, Azure Architect and Design.
okay. Application gateways and network security
Application,
groups, route cables and all will be covering under this
right.
course.
Let me tell you what all will be covered in the networking. Absolutely correct, ma'am. So in networking, we will first talk about how can we create virtual network. Then we will talk about how to create Azure firewall, how we can use Azure firewall, how can we restrict or how can we allow traffic with the help of Azure firewall. We will talk about Bastion service. There is something called Bastion host. With the help of that, you can take the RDPs of the machines. We will talk about NSG. We will talk about ASG. We will talk about DNS zones. We will talk about user defined routes. We will talk about system routes. We will talk about route table. We will talk about VNet peering. We will talk about VNet to VNet connection. We will talk about service chaining. We will talk about hub and spoke model. We will talk about application, Azure application gateway. We will talk about load balancer. We will talk about virtual WAN. We will talk about express route. So we will talk about all these things, and all those things we will talk about them in detail. So we will
Okay,
be covering
okay.
all those things, ma'am.
Okay, and hands-on will be on like suppose it will not be on a public IP, because if we work under certain companies, there will
Mhm.
not be any public IP to access any of the networks or the virtual machines there, right? Everything will be in a VNet and the I mean express route or the private thing. So
Absolutely
like the
correct.
hands-on will be like we should not be whitelisting our public IP and all. Like everything needs to be like a VNet will be created and every resource will be deployed in that VNet, and the hands-on will be certainly like that only, right? Instead of like creating the resources with the public IPs and all.
We will be doing both things, ma'am. You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely spot on.
Okay.
We will be doing both things. First we will understand how can we take the RDP of the machines with the help of public IP. Then, just like production, we will not give any public IP to a machine. We will not leave any public port open as well. Apart from giving it a public IP, not giving it a public IP, we also need to ensure that no public port should be open as well. Because if in case public port
Yeah.
is open, still if in case hacker can easily find out which ports are open. There are certain websites, you can go onto those websites, enter the public IP, and you can easily find out within some time that which ports are open onto that public IP as well. So even no
Yeah.
public port should be open. And still then we will make use of Bastion host, or we will make use of firewall in order to connect to our machines, which does not have any public IP. So we will talk all those
Okay.
things in detail, in very detailed manner.
Okay.
We will talk about that.
Okay, because the thing I'm stressing on this, because public IP everyone can access and no errors will be coming with that. Only we will be facing the issues while we are accessing the within the VNets only. Any administration related issues. That's the reason I have asked you, because everything is everyone's IP is a whitelisted thing. Everything will be connected, right? So that's the main thing.
Okay, you're absolutely correct, ma'am. You're absolutely spot on. So we can definitely do the same, and I'll be showing you
Okay.
everything. Like I will be doing the demonstration of everything. Plus, I'll be giving you good amount of time so that you guys can do the demonstration, so that even you can ensure
Okay.
whatever we have discussed, you have become an expert or you have got a good hands-on knowledge onto that.
Okay, Bhupen, that's all from me. Thanks. Thanks a lot for
Okay,
explaining the things.
you're welcome, ma'am.
Hi, Rupen.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Hi. Yeah. Sorry, this is Anit. I joined the call late. Probably 15-20 minutes late. So I have background of AD. So I'm completely working on premises into as a core AD admin. So here, like how you're like, are we going to discuss about the same setup on premises? Whatever you have, we are going to club it, like migrate to Azure. You're comparing like groups, policies, AD, DNS, and trust relationship, forest, everything. Are we going to set up the same thing?
No. So here we are not going to discuss forest,
Okay.
roots, trees. No, not at all. So here, what are we
Okay.
going to discuss in terms of AD is, first of all, here we will be discussing Azure AD. So how can you create users, groups, and all that part? How can you manage them? How can you manage? How can you give the directory roles, or how can you give the RBAC roles to your users or to your groups? Then we will talk about, so in Active Directory, the authentication that we use is Kerberos authentication, right? Now let's say you have got some
Yes.
users in Azure. Let's say you have got some users in Active Directory, and now you have got some application into cloud. Obviously your AD users would not be able to access those applications. So how can we sync the on-premise AD users to cloud, to Azure AD, so that they would be able to access those applications? While they will be accessing the applications, obviously there will be some authentication methods that can be used: pass-through authentication, PTA, ADFS, federation with ADFS. So we will be discussing about all those authentications. How can you authenticate the on-premise users with the cloud applications? Like when they have been synced with Azure AD, how the authentication will be working in the background. So we will be discussing major things which we'll be discussing is what are the authentication methods in on-prem, sorry, in cloud. So three different authentication methods we have: OpenID Connect, WSFed, and SAML. And OpenID Connect basically works on the OAuth, which is an authorization protocol, open authorization. Then we will be talking about how can we sync the users from on-prem to cloud, from on-prem Active Directory to Azure Active Directory. Then we will talk about, okay, we have synced the users from on-prem to cloud. How the authentication of the on-premise users will come into the picture. Obviously, we would not be doing the Kerberos authentication there. So how can we authenticate it, and how the authentication will be playing a role? So that is what all we will be talking about. How can we have different directories? How can we have multiple Azure AD tenants? How can we have B2B directory, or how can we have B2C directory? So we will talk about Azure Active Directory. We will be discussing Active Directory, but only for a couple of minutes. We will not be going into detail, because if we will go into detail onto AD, then probably the the identity with server 2016 is the right course in order to proceed for the same. 20742, I believe the course number is. I think that is the right course in order to proceed for the AD part. So we will be
Come again.
discussing.
What is the course number?
Just give me one moment. Let me share you the exact course number. Allow me a minute here. I think 20742 is the course number. Just allow me a moment. Yeah, 20742B. That is the course number. So I was absolutely correct. Yeah. So
Okay.
20742 is the course number, which is for on-premise Active Directory. It talks about identity with server 2016. That is the course number for Active Directory. But we will be talking Active Directory, but not in a detailed manner. So we will be talking about that, but yes, not in a detailed manner, sir. I hope it answers your query.
So looking at this, I think you are going to bring a, let's consider maybe background of any background. Just you are going to explain about the how Azure works from on-premises the Azure cloud, right?
We will be
Coming to your
discussing.
storage and network, whatever.
We will be discussing the all the concepts, and we will be doing the labs. So lab is the important part, right?
Mhm.
How can you hold
Okay.
things actually? So we will be discussing that as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, sir. You're welcome. I hope your name is Sir Bhanu Prakash, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I hope your query is answered, right?
Yes.
Okay. Guys, anyone else? Any other query?
I have a query regarding the serverless model. Are we going to cover any case?
Sir, so your voice is coming very low. I'm unable to hear you.
Okay, is it fine now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. Actually, I was just asking in serverless module which you have, will you be covering AKS or any Dockerization, containerization part? I mean, at least the overview part.
We will be talking about the AKS, the Azure Kubernetes service. We will be talking about all the aspects of the Kubernetes. We will be talking about the containers as well. We'll be talking about the Azure container registries as well. We will try to create an AKS cluster, and into the AKS cluster, we will try to deploy the application as well, and then we will try to access the application as well. So we'll be doing all that part.
Okay. And one more thing about the app services. I mean, we'll be covering, I mean, all types of app services like microservices, Tomcat Pass, or I mean, just an over.
So, sir, like microservices, we will not be covering. Unfortunately, it is not a part of this. So, in this particular course, in app service, we will be covering only web apps, right?
Oh.
Now, what are microservices? Microservices is nothing but, let's say, if in case you have running a monolithic application and you would like to break down into multiple microservices, you can do that. So there are multiple ways of creating microservices. Like you can use Azure Fabric for the same, like the services that you see, or probably I'm sure the services that you're using every now and then. For example, Microsoft Office 365, example Intune, right? So all these services are based upon the Azure Server Fabric, right? Azure Fabric, I'm sorry. So basically they are based upon the Azure Fabric. So Azure Fabric itself is a very big topic. Means for the Azure Fabric itself, there is a dedicated training for 4 to 5 days. So fortunately,
Oh.
unfortunately, that cannot be covered within this. So there is altogether a dedicated training for the Azure Fabric. Plus, there are certain prerequisites for that particular training as well. It is so one who has good understanding of the cloud infrastructure and good understanding of the cloud services. So there are certain prerequisites in order to attend the Azure Service Fabric training. So
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah, so probably I think we would not be able to cover the same, because here we don't want to make any false promise. It's not like for selling we will make any promises. Whatever we can do, we will only promise you that, because we really want you guys to have a very good customer experience. It's not like we are promising every thing here and there. It would not be the case. Whatever can be covered and whatever can be covered in a detailed manner, along with a good hands-on lab, we will be only promising you that, right?
Oh, okay. And one more thing, Anil, is it like, I mean, will we be taking, I mean, app gateway V1, V2 also, or only V2? I mean, how about
I'm sorry, sir, I was
application?
unable to get that part. Can you please come again?
In application gateways, I mean, we have V1, V2 kind of, will be
Right.
covering both or
So the
only?
difference, so I can explain you all of them. The difference between V1 and V2 is in V1, you can have number of, you can say how many number of instances you need in the background. In V2, you can have the auto scaling part along with the WAF. So V2 supports auto scaling along with the WAF. You can have multiple IPs, you can have private IP, public IP. So we'll be covering all this aspect. So let me give you some picture here. So what V2 can provide, which V1 cannot provide. Obviously, we will be discussing the differences. How does Azure application works? How is it different from Azure load balancer? We will be discussing that in detail, right? There are certain things which can be achieved. There are certain things which cannot be achieved. What are those things which cannot be achieved? Let's say if you say that, can you show us that how to hit an Azure application gateway with a public certificate? Right? So Azure Application Gateway has a very good feature of certificate offloading. Certificate offloading can be done. How it can be done, I can show you, right? But if in case you ask me to perform it, I can perform it. But if in case for that, we need to have a public certificate, and public certificates are costly. The cost of a public certificate is good. It can be hundreds, it can be couple of hundreds of dollars. So if in case you have got the public certificate, I can show you the demonstration, right? But if in case we haven't got the public certification, then I can show you where it can be added. Once it will be added, how it will be behaving. So everything will be covered in a very detailed manner. Don't worry about that. It's not like we will be doing this course for the first time. uh, I think I cannot remember how many batches or how many participants we have trained onto this particular course. So I understand whenever participant comes, they have a query regarding this. What will be covered, how it will be covered. Trust me, we will be covering it in a very detailed manner. We will try to answer all your queries. There can be certain queries which cannot be answered then and there, although 95 to 90% of the queries will be answered then and there. But let's say maybe you have a query, maybe which even some trainer doesn't have an answer. We will get back to it. Means we will do a in-depth research onto it and we will get back to you. Queries will be answered. If in case query is out of the course, probably we will just guide you in the right direction, right? If in case the query is altogether regarding a structured database, which is not a part of this course, then we can just guide you in the right direction. If in case it is related to this course, it will be answered then and there. Maybe there is a worst case scenario, we are unable to answer your query then and there. We will do an in-depth research, we will get back to you. Motive is to give you a very sound knowledge, not only the theoretical knowledge, the practical knowledge, because that is must. So that will be the motive of the training. I hope, sir, your query is answered to a certain extent. Okay. So, guys, any other question, any other query we have? Okay. So, here is the link. Sorry, here is the contact number of the Amit. Amit is from our management team. So here you have the contact number of him. Anyone who would like to enroll for this training, probably you can contact Amit and he would be able to do the registration, and then we would be able to define a batch and we would be able to initiate the training. So would request you guys, whosoever would be interested, you can just take a picture of it, or maybe you can take a snapshot of it. You can take a snapshot of it and you would be able to contact him, maybe on via phone or maybe via WhatsApp. He will be reachable via both, right? Now just wait for a minute or two. Let me give you a minute or two, so probably you can just make a note of the contact details, and then I'll give you a session for couple of minutes. Let me share what would be the teaching methodology, how we will be teaching you on different aspects. So I will be giving you a session on 30 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes, let's say. I will be giving you some basic insight of the Azure. How can we start with Azure, right? So just pause it, or just go on mute for one moment, for 1 minute, and then we will start. Okay. Thank you. Okay, I think we are good. I think probably everyone would have taken the contact detail of Amit, right? Anyone who has missed it anyhow, please uh, ping it onto the chat window. I'll open this page again, right? So that would be all from my end regarding this presentation. Now I'll start a session for a couple of minutes. I'll give you a session for a couple of minutes, right? See it here. Okay, so let me just. So first of all, what do we need to do? First of all, since we are talking about the Azure, we will first need to have an Azure account, right? That is a must. We need to have an Azure account. Now, how can we create an Azure account? It's pretty simple. You can just go to portal.azure.com. You can go to portal.azure.com. That is the portal for the Azure. So you can go to portal.azure.com and you would be able to create an Azure account from here. So if you already have an account, you can simply log in. If you doesn't have an account, then probably you can just go here, create one. You will get an option to create one, right? So you would be able to choose the email address of your choice. When you click on create one, it gives you an option to get a new email address, and you would be able to create an email address, right? So let's say if I've already got an account, then I can simply log in with that account, right? I will simply log in with my credentials. I'll just type my credentials here. I will type the password. And that's how we are inside the Azure account. So we are inside the Azure account. That is how the portal of the Azure looks like. So, and maybe anyone who is not familiar with the Azure, that is how the portal of the Azure looks like, right? So let me give you a very basic feature here, very basic feature, right? So I'll be launching a guided tour. So if in case you have to create any resource means if you have to create any storage account, any VM, any load balancer, any virtual network, any Kubernetes cluster, anything, you can just click on here. If you need to go to your home page, you can just click here. This will take you to your home page. If you would like to have your customized dashboard, so from here you can have your customized dashboard. If in case you want to look for all the services that Azure offers, so Azure offers you more than 100 services, so you can go here. For example, if you are trying to create a virtual machine, either you can click on create a resource, or you can go to all services. If you go to all services, inside all services you will find compute. So virtual machines is a part of a compute service, right? So you will just go inside the compute, and from there you would be able to create it. Now, if you want to pin or unpin your favorites, just like we pin or unpin the favorites in Internet Explorer, or we pin or unpin something into the Google Chrome as a bookmarks. So that is how you can pin or unpin your favorites here. If you have created something, or if you want to create something, you want to search here, you can use the search box. If in case you would like to see how many directory and how many subscriptions you have, you can check from here. What is directory and what is subscription? We will talk about that. Within a couple of minutes, we'll talk about that. Whatever you are creating, if you are creating any VM, if you are making any changes to a VM, if you are removing any VM, if you are making any changes, you will see a notification here. Want to open a service ticket with Microsoft? You can open it from here. If you want to see your account information, you would be able to change it from here. So that is how, this is a very basic part of it. Now let's see it here. Now, if in case we're talking about Azure, so we have created an Azure account, and now we can go inside the Azure portal, right? Everything will have two kind of the architecture. So it will have a physical architecture, and it will have a logical architecture. So we will talk about both the architecture in detail. Now, what is physical architecture? Physical architecture looks like this. At the top, you have got something called regions. Microsoft has got 60 plus regions, and they are spread across 140 countries. Now, what does region means? Region means if in case Microsoft is giving you a facility that you can host your resources into their data centers. Obviously, those data centers would be located somewhere, right? So you can say that those are available across 60 different regions. Depending upon the requirement, or depending upon the Microsoft understanding of the requirement, they have deployed the resources or the data centers into multiple regions. Regions like East US, West US, Canada Central, Central India, South India, UK South. So these 60 regions are available across the globe. Maybe let's say in US, the requirement is huge. In US, they can have multiple regions. In India, maybe they have 3 regions. So it basically depends upon the requirement. Just mention about availability zones. Don't worry, sir. We'll be talking about availability zones, and we will be talking about availability zones in detail. I'm coming on to it. Just allow me a couple of minutes. Availability zones will be clear. Just allow me some time. Thank you. So first of all, it is divided like this into regions, right? Now, again, it depends upon the requirement. For example, the requirement is huge in US. there are multiple regions available in US. The requirement comparatively is less in India. In India, we have got 3 regions. Comparatively, I think the requirement would be less in Africa. So for the entire Africa continent, they have just got 2 regions, and both the regions are a part of South Africa. Both the regions are in South Africa. So it can depend. Maybe in one country, there can be multiple regions. Maybe for multiple countries, there can be one region. So 60 plus regions which are available across 140 countries, right? After regions, we have got something called zones. You can call them as availability zones, or you can call them as zones. So let's call them as availability zones, AZs, or you can just call them as zones. First of all, out of 60 regions, there are hardly few regions which contain zones. Not all the regions contain zones. Out of 60 regions, if I say, then there would be roughly around 10 regions which contain zones. Now, what is zones and what is the use of zones? So zones can provide you a better redundancy. We will talk about that. Let's see it how. After zones, there is something called data centers. And whatever region contains zones, there will be 3 zones in it. As of now, there will be 3 zones. Microsoft may increase it in future, but as of now, there will be 3 zones. After zones, we have got data centers. So I'm sure all of you would have seen the data centers, and inside data centers we have got racks. So this is how the physical architecture of the Azure looks like, right? Regions, inside regions there will be zones, inside zones there can be multiple data centers, or inside data centers there will be multiple racks. So let me draw 2 diagrams. So assuming this is a Microsoft region which contains zones, there can be 2 possibilities. Let's say this is the East US region which contains zones. There will be 3 zones. So you can go here, zone number 1, zone number 2, and there will be zone number 3. So I'm giving it a name zone 1. This is zone number 2, and this will be zone number 3. All these zones are connected to each other. All these zones are connected to each other. Normally, one zone is separated to another zone, or one availability zone is separated to another availability zone by a distance of 10 to 15 miles. By a distance of 10 to 15 miles, they are separated to each other. And one region is separated to another region by a distance of around 300 miles. It can be more, it can be less. Somewhere around 300 miles, they are separated to each other. This is the East US region which contains zones, 3 zones. In every zone, there can be multiple data centers. There can be 2 or more than 2. So there are multiple data centers. I am just drawing 2 because of space constraint, but there can be multiple data centers inside a zone. Right, so I have drawn multiple data centers in all the zones. Now, in every data center, there will be multiple racks. So this is not, this is, we'll just refer it with the name zones. This is not availability zones. We'll talk about how to make use of availability zone. Availability zones will only be used in those places where zones are there. But how they come into the picture, that is a different story. When we talk about availability zones, then we talk about fault domains and update domain. So we'll talk about that as well, but you can just refer it with the name zones. Right, these can be, sometimes you will see or being referred as availability zones, but if I'm referring them with availability zones, then the fault domains and update domains should have been discussed. So that is the reason I'm just calling them zones as of now. They can be referred to as availability zone as well, but for that, the racks that we are drawing here, these will be referred to as fault domains, and then we will break them horizontally into update domains. So we will be discussing that concept, but not right now. Probably in some time we will be discussing it. So I'm just drawing racks as of now. So in every data center, we have drawn multiple racks. Right? Now there can be a region which does not contain zone. For example, we talk about only out of 60, only certain region contains zones. Out of 60, you will find only 10 region contain zones. So maybe let's say this is the Central India region, which does not contain zone. This is the Central India region, which does not contain zone. Then we will have directly data centers into it. And there can be multiple data centers. I'm just drawing two because of space constraint, but there will be multiple data centers. And inside data centers, there will be racks. There will be racks here, right? So that is how the physical architecture of the Azure will look like. Anyone, any question as of now from the physical architecture of the Azure? Anyone guys, any question as of now from the physical architecture of the Azure? Okay. Okay, I think we are good. So let me show you something. Okay. Now let's talk about the, this is the physical architecture. Now let's talk about the logical architecture of the Azure, which is a really important one. So I'll be talking about the logical architecture now. Okay, so in logical architecture, we have got something as subscription, right? Subscription means whatever resources you will be creating that will be deployed on a certain subscription, and the billing of those resources will be going to that subscription. So let's say you have created an Azure account. Okay, you have created an Azure account. That's wonderful. But without having a subscription, you would not be able to create a resource. Means you cannot create any VM, you cannot create any VNet, you cannot create any database, you cannot create a normal storage account, you cannot create any load balancer. All these are resources. So whatever, and you would not be able to create any resource by the time you will not have a subscription, right? And let's say you have a subscription, so you would be able to create resource. How can you check the billing of the resources? How much your VM is costing you? How will you check? You would be able to check all that part with the help of your subscription. So subscription is mandatory in order to create a resource. Without having a subscription, resources cannot be created. If I give you a very layman terms example, let's say you purchase a mobile phone. Now, just by having a mobile phone, you would not be able to make a phone call. You cannot make a local call. You cannot make an international call. You cannot send messages. You cannot make even a WhatsApp call, right? Any call you will not be able to make. Now, subscription is like a SIM card. Whatever calls you are making, first of all, you need to have a SIM card. Then only you will be able to make out a call. And whatever calls you will be making, it will be billed to your SIM card, right? So just like that, without having a subscription, you cannot create any resource. Now, after subscription, there is something called as resource group. After subscription, there is something called as resource group. Resource group is like a logical container. It's like a container. Resource group is like a container where you can hold multiple resources. So in resource group, maybe you have multiple resources. Resources can be of the same type. Resources can be of a different type. Means within a resource group, maybe you have 5 virtual machines, maybe you have 2 storage account, and maybe you have 1 virtual network. So these are different type of resources, 3 category of resources. Virtual machine is 1 category of a resource, storage account is a different category of a resource, and virtual network is a different category of a resource. So in a resource group, maybe you can have resources of the same type, maybe you can have resources of a different type. Resource group is nothing but a container which contains the metadata of the resources. So let's say I have to create a resource group. What do I need? First of all, I need a subscription. Without having a subscription, I cannot create a resource group. Okay, I've got a subscription with the name subscription number 1. What else do I need? I need the name. Okay, let's say I'm giving it a name RG1, resource group 1. Then I need a location, or you can say the region. So we discussed a couple of minutes back that Microsoft has got 60 plus regions: East US, West US, Central India. So any region you can pick where you would like to create a resource group. So let's say I choose a region East US, right? Your resource group will be created. Your resource group will be created. Now, After resource group, there is something called as resources. Now you'll be creating the resources. Resources like your VM, storage account, VNet, load balancer. Now, what do I need in order to create a resources? What do I need in order to create a resources is, you need a subscription. Without having a subscription, nothing will work. I need a resource group. I have got a resource group with the name RG1. And now you need the name of a resource. Maybe I'm creating a VM. I gave it a name VM number 1. You need the region of the resource or the location of the resource. Why do I need a region again? I have already defined my RG1 as in East US. Means now you need to define a region. Means you can pick up East US. That is possible. Or you can even pick up Central India. That is also possible. Means it is not mandatory that the region of the resource group and the region of the resource will be same. Region of the resource group and the region of the resources may or may not be same. Although it is recommended, by the time there is not a requirement of keeping a resource into a different region, the region of the resource group and the region of the resource should be same. So by the time there is not a requirement to host a resource into a different region, all the resources should be in the same region, and that should be the region of the resource group, right? Just above it, there is something called as management group. Management group is at a bigger level as compared to a subscription. But why I have drawn this tilted line, I have drawn this intentionally. Management group may or may not be there. It's not mandatory to have a management group. For example, we discussed that if in case we do not have a subscription, we would not be able to create a resource group. We do not have a subscription, we cannot create any resource. But even if in case I have not created a management group in Azure, I still can get subscription. I can still create resource groups. I can still create resources. All that part can be done, right? So now what is the purpose of having a management group? Management group can serve you two important purposes. Two important purposes can be served with the help of a management group. First of all, guys, please remember, in Azure, there is no concept of group policy. Group policy concept is not there in Azure. Group policy concept we have in Active Directory, that is not there in Azure. In Azure, there is something called as Azure policies. There is something called as Azure policies. So if you have to apply policies at scale, that is something which can be done with the help of management group. And in order to manage multiple subscription, that can be done with the help of a management group. Two things. Now, how can we apply policies at scale? We need to go in depth of it. So we will be doing it once we'll be going for the particular course. Then we'll be talking about them. We'll talk about how can we apply policies at scale, how to do that, how to manage multiple subscriptions, how to do that. We will talk all about them in detail. But once we will be going for the, obviously once we'll be enrolling for this course, or while we'll be starting the discussion for the course, then we will go on to all this part in detail. So that is something which I have given you a glimpse how the training will be proceeding. So we have discussed the logical architecture. We have discussed the physical architecture. I'll give you one more concept here, right? Since you guys have given so much amount of time, I really appreciate it. So I'll be giving you one more concept here. So it's like a free demo class you can refer to, right? So we discussed that we need to create an Azure account, right? We discussed we need to create an Azure account, right? So let's say my Azure account is bhupinder.thakur at outlook.com. That is my Azure account. As soon as you create an Azure account, Microsoft gives you two things. One is it gives you Azure AD instance. Azure AD stands for Azure Active Directory, and it gives you a domain. Why does it give me a domain? Let's see. Okay, this is one thing. Now let's say there is an organization called HCL. So if in case you are creating an Azure account with HCL, obviously you will be creating some users. How does users gets created? User gets created like this: user @ or at domain name, right? If you have to create a user with the name ABC, how would it look like? abc@hcl.com or xyz@hcl.com, right? That is how a user will look like. So what do you need in order to create a user? You need the domain name. We discussed in Azure, there is no concept of Active Directory. There is something called as Azure AD. If you have to create users and groups, you have to go to Azure AD. If you have to create users and groups, you have to create Azure AD. So in Azure AD, you can create users and groups. But we discussed few minutes back, in order to create users, what do you need? You also need a domain name. Without having a domain name, you would not be able to create the user. So that is the reason Microsoft is giving you a domain by default. Now, how does it give me a domain? Please excuse me for the background noise. So whatever your Azure account is, it will remove special characters from the Azure account. What are the special characters? Dot is a special character. At the rate or at is a special character. So it will just remove the special character from here. So after removing it, how will it become? It will become Bhupinder. It will remove dot Thakur. It will remove at Outlook dot on Microsoft.com. So that is how the domain will look like. Bhupinder, it removed dot Thakur, it removed at Outlook dot on Microsoft.com. Now there can be a query here. There can be a participant query here. Why it did not pick up com? Why it's not outlook.com dot on Microsoft.com? I'm sure all of you are aware of this, that .com is a top level domain. It's a top level domain. Top level domain cannot come twice, right? In DNS, it's a top level domain. .com, .net, .co, .in. These are all top level domains. So they cannot come twice. That is the reason .com part is not included. It's included here. Whenever it creates a domain, whenever Microsoft gives you a domain, it gives you a domain at .onmicrosoft.com. Now you have got the Azure AD, you have got the domain. Now let's say you have to create a user with the name ABC. How will the user look like? It will look like this: ABC at Bhupinder Thakur Outlook dot on Microsoft.com. It will look like this, right? So it's a very big username. This is your domain. It's username at domain name. If you have to create a user with the name test, it will look like this, right? So that is how you would be able to create users. Now the question comes, maybe I don't want this kind of a user. I don't want this kind of a user. Maybe I have got my domain. I have purchased my domain as well. My domain is Bhupinder at, okay, my domain is, I have purchased a domain with the name bhupinder.com. This is my domain. And I want to create a user like this, abc at bhupinder.com or xyz at bhupinder.com. Can I do this? Yes, absolutely we can do this. So there is something called custom domain names in Azure. In Azure AD, when you go to Azure AD, there is something called as custom domain names. If you go to custom domain names, you would be able to add your domain here. You would be able to add your domain. What is my domain? My domain is bhupinder.com. I would be able to add a domain. There is a process to add a domain. You have to create a text record or an MX record. Then you have to verify the domain. You have to go to the domain registrar. So I'm just giving you a glimpse, right? So you would be able to add a domain. And once you would be able to add a domain, then when you try to create a user, what will happen? Now you have got two domains. Now let's say you're trying to create a user with the name test123. Now when you try to create a user, you have two options. You can create a user with the name test123 at bhupinder.com. That is one option. Or you can create a user test123 at Bhupinder Thakur Outlook.onmicrosoft.com. Both the options you will get, right? That is how we would be able to add a domain. Any question, anything, whatever we have discussed so far, like anyone has any question, anything, whatever we have discussed so far? Okay, so please let me know if you have any questions, anything. Anyone has any question, anything so far?
Yeah, I forgot. You mentioned about which Azure course that goes over more in depth on the ADFS.
Sorry, sir.
Okay, earlier you mentioned I forgot the number. You said 207 or 204. That goes
20742.
more in. 20742. Okay, thank you. Just wanted, cool.
So that is for the identity with 2016. So you're talking
Yeah.
about the on-premise course. It's a 20742. It's the course's identity with server 2016, right?
Identity service 2000. Okay. Thanks.
So that covers in detail regarding how to create forest, how to create domains, how to create
Yeah.
It basically talks about AD, group policy, domains, OUs, ADFS, replication, all that part in detail.
Correct. That's the one I was
All right.
inquiring about. Cool.
All right. Thank you, sir. Guys, anyone else, any other query, anything that is coming across your mind, anything where I can just, maybe I can add my value or anything I can refer you to. So that is all from my end for today. Would look forward to see you. And that is how we are going to discuss, things. Once we have completed the discussion, then we will come to here to the portal, and then we'll start doing the labs. Whatever part we will be discussing, after completing the topic, I will be giving you some time so that we can have a question and the answer round for the topic. Once your doubts are clear, then we will jump onto the practical for the same. We will do a practical, then we'll be giving you certain time so that you guys can perform the practical. And once we are good, then we will move on to a next topic. So that is how we will be proceeding during the training part. Okay.
And when would the training begin? Like end of August or beginning of September?
I think we can start it early. It's like we have continuously the batches are going on. So it's not like we have to wait for the end of August or probably for the first week of September. So we have few participants have like these kinds of webinars are going out every now and then. So we already have few participants. As soon as we have the number that we are looking for in a complete batch, we will just start the process. Maybe within 4 or 5 days or within a week or two, we'll just start the process. So we'll not wait for that long in order to initiate the training, right?
Okay.
So I think rest all these details can be shared to you by Amit. As I mentioned, like he is a part of the management team who is taking care of all this part, the coordination part and all the batch booking part. So he will be booking up the courses, and then accordingly he will be giving you a time as in when while you'll be booking a course, he will give you a definite time, and accordingly we'll start the batch, right? So like since multiple batches are going on like back and forth, so he would be the right person who would be able to share the timings and the batch starting date, right?
Cool. Thank you. That's all on my end.
All right. Anyone else, guys? Any other query, or shall we call it a day, or we call it a discussion?
Call it for a night. Yeah, for you.
Yeah, it would be a night for us. Absolutely, absolutely, sir. Right. Okay. Well,
that's it.
That would be all from my end. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for giving your precious time. Really nice interacting you all. Yeah, look forward to see you. And anytime you have any query, feel free to ask. Guys, we are here to assist, right? So thank you very much, guys. Really nice interacting with you all. That would be all from my end. I'm just stopping the sharing, and that would be all from my end. Thank you very much, team. Have a good day and take good care of yourself. Stay safe. Stay safe.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome, sir. Welcome.